Liz.
How you doing?
I'm okay.
Just okay.
Yeah, so we're on episode 16 today, which is pretty cool. And we've been at this weekly since May 8th, which is interesting. We were like, we're going to go to weekly. And we've had a lot of nice feedback from folks about the weekly releases, which is great.
That is great.
So next week is the first week that we're not going to be together doing a weekly episode because you're going to...
Budapest.
Oh, Budapest. We don't talk about this a lot. We work for a Regional Education Service Center, which is a nonprofit center. Around most of the country, these are called ESAs in the United States, Educational Service Agencies. So unlike a lot of the folks that we work with, we work generally during the summer, but no, not you next week.
No, I unfortunately have to go to Budapest because my daughter is competing with the Aquianas in the Hungarian Cup.
The Aquianas?
Yes, that's the name of her team.
Oh, really?
Yes, the New Canaan Aquianas.
I'm going to leave it right there. If you know Connecticut's geography, New Canaan and Aquianas would signify, something that just feels fancy. But all right, so you're going away. Where am I? Oh, I'm home. Ahmed, you're going away too?
I am.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be in West Stockbridge, Massachusetts and Litchfield, Connecticut. So lovely for you guys. But I'll miss you. I really will miss you. It's been fun having our regular recordings. But fear not, we are staying with our weekly schedule. And we have a fantastic interview next week. We have 3 interviews this summer while my colleagues are jet-setting around the world. And so the first one is going to be with this really cool student named Charlie Hughes. We've got an interview with our boss, Jonathan Costa, coming up later in the summer. And we just recorded a really cool interview with a tech lead in one of our districts named Ed Duclo. So you guys go party it up. I'll mind the shop.
Well, thanks, Matt.
I'm Matt Mervis.
And I'm Liz Rade.
And this is ChatEDU, a podcast about AI in K-12 education. In today's episode, Bottom Up AI, where proactive educators lead, we'll explore how educators at all levels can advance their work with AI, regardless of what state or federal policies are in place where they live.
But first, in the news, Matt will stack large language models up against world-class ethicists to see who is better at dishing out moral advice.
Then Liz will unpack the Surgeon General's new proposed warning label on social media tools and a related study on AI and child development.
And then we'll go beneath the surface as we look at how practical pedagogy can power past policy paralysis in AI. Ooh, check out that alliteration.
Yeah, you're good. You're going away, but you're good.
Thanks, Matt. And we'll end with another short stack chat back.
So Liz, anyone who listens to ChatEDU knows that you are pretty much a by-the-book kind of person, right?
Well, I hope so. Say more. No, really, say more.
Flattery? You want a little flattery? All right. So as you've shared, you had a Catholic upbringing. You don't drink or smoke.
Basically true, except on the days that we record, I sound like this. This is ChatEDU.
That's after a heavy night of smoking and drinking?
Yeah.
All right. I don't buy that, but nonetheless. All right. You met your husband by passing notes kind of through a middle school kid in a Camden Catholic school. You don't indulge in not safe for work content, both at work or at home. And I mean, listen, even your dog doesn't bark. You're basically a picture of virtue. Am I right? I mean, can you prove me wrong? If you feel comfortable, Liz, what is the most unethical thing you've done in the last year?
In the last year? I don't know. I'm pretty ethical. I probably told some white lies and, I definitely took candy from my kid's Halloween stash.
Oh, that's so wrong.
The last time I got in trouble was in college. I was at a party, the RAs came to break it up, and I didn't want to get in trouble since I was literally not doing anything wrong. I didn't drink, I wasn't drinking, so I hid in a closet. But unfortunately, the RAs were doing rather thorough checks through the apartment since 3 of my friends had literally just been caught hiding in a bathroom. So not only did we get in trouble for being at a party with underage drinking, we got in even more trouble for hiding from the RA. Oh, we got this letter. It was terrible. And since I'd been such a good kid and had never gotten in any sort of trouble before, I was terrified. My friend Brianne and I basically thought we were going to get kicked out of college, not be able to study abroad, not be able to be on the crew team anymore. I was a wreck. Kids, if you're listening and you're caught at a party, just leave. So you get in way less trouble that way.
Did you confess this to your parents?
Not for a while, but they do know the story now.
Okay, well, I know they listen regularly, so they'll enjoy hearing it again.
Well, Matt, with that said, we get it. So what's your point?
Wow. All right. We're establishing high ethical standards, low patience. All right. Well, hang with me. So where do you turn to when you need some ethical guidance in those very rare cases, apparently, when you don't intuitively know what to do?
I guess my husband, even though I throw him under the bus here sometimes, and he did use students to ask me out by having them deliver notes, he's got pretty high ethical standards. Why do you ask?
Well, so it turns out that generative AI is actually a darn good ethicist as well, maybe as good as Adam. But to be clear, since what AI is doing is really looking for patterns in language to predict the next word or the next sentence, it's not like they're a great ethicist. They're really responding effectively to a prompt, but they do seem to generate very solid ethical responses to moral and ethical dilemmas.
Well, that's interesting. We've established in past episodes that generative AI chatbots do more than score well on standardized benchmarks like the bar, GREs, medical boards, and the like. And they also do well in those kind of double-blind performance tests. We've reviewed studies where chatbots in very controlled conditions outperformed real live doctors or did a quote-unquote better job than counselors on things like cognitive reappraisal, like recognizing someone's emotional state and providing some guidance and reframing, basically what Pi does for me on a daily basis.
Yeah, me too.
So I'm thinking someone has done one of these studies on ethical and moral guidance, Matt? Is that where you're going? Finally?
Finally, yes. That's exactly where I'm going. There's a fascinating new paper titled Artificial Intelligence as a Moral Expert? Evaluating GPT models in moral reasoning. It was just published by the Journal of Ethics in AI Research. In short, the paper explores the potential of large language models, such as GPT-4, to serve as, kind of like a moral expert. It evaluates the capability of large language models to provide moral advice and reasoning by comparing them to lay people or even professional ethicists. The study finds that GPT-4 often provides advice that is rated as more moral, more trustworthy, more thoughtful, and actually correct, so to speak, than a renowned ethicist. And actually, it was cool. The thing that they used to compare this, there's this great column in the New York Times called The Ethicist. And so they use the ethicist as their benchmark. So here's how it worked. The research involved two studies with pretty good sample sizes, 500 people in one, just under 1,000 in the other, and they compared moral explanations and advice between GPT-4 and human counterparts. GPT-4's advice was rated on moral soundness, trustworthiness, thoughtfulness, nuance, and correctness, with it outperforming human advice on these metrics. GPT-4's answers were assessed using a variant of the moral Turing test, right? You remember the Turing test where you could say, am I responding to a human being or to a chatbot? So apparently there's some variant of this called the moral Turing test, showing that they can perform moral reasoning at above human levels. So what do you think of that, Dr. Rade?
Well, I guess I'm not surprised. It does make you realize the potential power of these models, though. I mean, whatever authority is dishing out moral and ethical guidance has the ability to steer someone's reasoning and the way they look at life, like a parent, a church, or the New York Times, for that matter.
Exactly.
So if the church or parent has a particular agenda or thing they want to get across, moral guidance is a great place to do it. So how will a large language model trained in China or the UAE provide guidance in ways that shape those countries' or political parties' agendas? While not everyone around the world has access to the internet, where folks do, it seems like they could get more diverse information and input as opposed to some single fast-talking language model. It also makes me think about whose moral and ethics it's trained on. Could be another potential place for bias to come in.
I love that idea. You're a fast-talking language model there, buddy. I think that totally makes sense. And as we've shared so many times here, it's likely that these AI experiences will go from being just a single chatbot in the web page to voice and video and VR and holograms or holographics. And so, folks will be inclined to turn to this fast-talking single source of information because it's such a compelling and engaging way to get the information you're looking for.
Okay, so I wanted to check this out for real. I went to the ethicist on the Times website, and let me say, there are some doozies there. So let me give you a juicy one. My friend asked for clothing donations and then sold them on Poshmark. Do I confront her?
Ooh, that is juicy.
Yeah, so here's the scenario. My friend is a high school teacher in a low-income area. She always shares tearful stories of her students' need for food, school supplies, professional clothes for job interviews, and so on. Over the years, I've donated food, snacks, and clothing for her to give to her students. A few months ago, my friend said there was a job fair coming up at the school, and the students needed clothes. She would take anything we could donate. I went through my closet and gathered professional blazers, skirts, pants, and blouses and gave them to her. Long story short, I decided to start an account on Poshmark to sell my family's old clothes. When I looked up some of my friends' closets on the site, I discovered my teacher friend had posted and sold all the items I gave her for her students.
That's messed up.
Not just one or two items, all 20. What's the right thing to do? Do I confront her or do I ignore the fact that those kids never got the donated items? Once a donation has been made, what is the ethical expectation? So that's the scenario.
That is good. I should say, too, we'll drop in the link to the ethicist. I think it's publicly available. I don't think there's a paywall, but that is one of many really juicy ethical dilemmas. It's a fun page.
Yeah, definitely. So here's what the ethical expert at the time said, basically. First, diverting donations from intended beneficiaries is equivalent to stealing, especially from the poor. Ethics involves holding people accountable for serious wrongdoing, and a friend who betrays trust by misrepresenting their actions should be confronted. Even with good intentions, transparency and truth are necessary, and the reader should address the issue directly to help maintain peace of mind.
Yeah. Okay. That was really, really good. So look, this is not a formal study, and we don't have the time or the expertise to kind of reinvent what they did with this moral Turing test. But let's have a large language model take a stab at it. We're going to use the state-of-the-art AI model is at least state-of-the-art for the next 10 days until someone else releases a new update that surpasses them. But for today, it's Claude 3.5 Sonnet. This came out just maybe 5 or 6 days ago, and the internet and LinkedIn kind of freaked out. This is the free version of Claude, and folks are clearly digging it. I will say they have this cool feature called artifacts. So when you get like an output from ChatGPT or from Gemini, sometimes it would be helpful to actually edit the output directly there as a way of doing a revision or just being able to have it rather than bring it over into Google Docs or Word. And so with this new artifacts feature, you can actually edit right in there. Now, this is probably more useful for people who are writing software, but honestly, any interface enhancement is kind of important to track because this is all brand new, the way we interact with these chatbots. All right, so here's Claude's take. In this case, we're using 11 labs to bring this to life. Oh, and the prompt we're going to use is this. So we said to Claude, you are a world-class ethicist. In fact, you might even be as good as folks over at the New York Times column, The Ethicist. What's your take on this moral dilemma?
Nice, Matt. True to form, you're giving the chatbot a role, you're giving it some additional context, and then a clear task. I know we shared this last week too, but you can see lots of prompts that follow this basic format on our team's AI site at skills21.org/prompts. We'll drop that in the show notes along with this study. Okay, so let's see what Claude and 11 Labs has to say.
This is indeed a complex ethical situation with several layers to consider. Let's break it down. The teacher explicitly asked for donations for her students, creating an expectation that the items would be used for that purpose. By selling the items instead, she has breached the trust of the donor and potentially other donors as well. Approach this without accusation, but with a genuine desire to understand the situation. There might be explanations you haven't considered. Express concern. If the conversation confirms your suspicions, it's important to express your disappointment and concern. This isn't just about your donation, but about the potential breach of trust with other donors and the school community. Seek resolution. If the teacher acknowledges wrongdoing, discuss how she plans to make amends. This could involve returning the money to you or donating it to the school for student needs. The ethical expectation after a donation is made is that it will be used for its stated purpose, especially when solicited for a specific cause. This situation highlights the importance of transparency in charitable giving. It also serves as a reminder that ethical behavior often requires us to hold not just strangers, but also friends, accountable for their actions.
All right, so what do you think, Dr. Radde?
Wow. I think Claude did a really good job of explaining the ethical response while also pointing out that there could be some gray areas. I think it's a really solid response.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. One final thing about Claude here, by the way, I don't want to suggest that the vast majority of teachers should need or want to juggle like 5 different large language models as they're learning to use these tools. But for those of you who are really into this stuff, which Liz is basically the people that listen to ChatEDU, it might be interesting to try a prompt like this in a few places. Lately during professional development, if I've got a more advanced group of users, which is happening, right? And then you've got folks who are new, I'll have the more advanced folks use a prompt but do it in ChatGPT, then do it in Perplexity, then do it in Claude, maybe do it in Gemini, not all of them, but just a few. And it's a nice way to differentiate because the more advanced users are able to experience, what does it look like? Do I get different outputs from different large language models at the same time that someone who's brand new is just kind of checking this out for the first time? And then as a bonus, right, when we stop and do the reflection, the more advanced users can share that experience. So the novice users hear, what's going on. I think we've probably said this, but I feel like we're living in the Ask Jeeves, Alta Vista, Yahoo era, pre-Google, where there's just lots of different large language models floating out there. So if you've got the bandwidth, dig in. Diversity is the spice of life, correct, Dr. Radde?
Yes, it is. As long as it's not spicy and diverse on my plate, because there I'm like a 7-year-old. It's chicken nuggets and french fries for me.
Oh my God, you cracked me up. Yeah, she's not kidding, folks. I've come to know this over nearly a decade of lunches and conferences and trainings. Liz, the ChatEDU crew learns more about us each and every week, and still they keep coming back. We'll see what happens after you abandon them and go to Budapest, but
they're going to come back. Matt, I've been following the buzz around social media, and it seems like it is a really hot topic just about everywhere right now. Just over a year ago, in May 2023, the U.S. Surgeon General said that social media was likely causing harm to kids. At that time, he issued an advisory about the potentially harmful effects of social media on children and young adults' mental health. So this definitely got people talking, and here at EdAdvance, we actually took some action. Our executive director encouraged us to create the Social Balance, and this is a curriculum about social media. I did a little help designing it, and our colleague Cam, who uses no social media at all due to her own feelings at the time that she was wasting time on it and it wasn't making her feel great. So Cam did the heavy lifting of really designing the entire curriculum. We did not want this to be some sort of finger wagging, don't touch it, stay away, it's dangerous kind of course. And we decided to take a really kind of scientific or STEM approach to the content. And I love what Cam did because the curriculum digs into the math behind the algorithms, the science about dopamine, and then we offer some very practical suggestions for creating a healthy relationship with social media. And a bunch of schools have used the curriculum with older middle school and early high school students, and it's gotten great reviews.
Yeah, it has. It's been really, really helpful. If you'd like to learn more, you can visit skills21.org and select the Social Balance in the top navigation. Sorry, Liz, for this brief promotional interruption.
All good. So in the past few months, things have gotten more serious for 2 reasons. First, Jonathan Haidt published his book called The Anxious Generation, which is basically about the impact a phone-based childhood, and particularly social media, has had on children and young adults. I have listened to just about every interview he has done on TV and on podcasts, and I haven't read the entire book because it is so hot on the library list. I'm months away from getting it.
Don't want to buy it, huh?
I might cave. It might be one I need on my shelf.
Okay.
I've listened to Matt talk a ton, and I've gotten his message loud and clear. The phones are dangerous for mental health, especially for teen girls, and I've got 2 teen girls.
Yes, you do.
And just last week, the Surgeon General has called on Congress to put a warning label on social media, similar to the warning labels on cigarettes. He can't just give them out. It's got to go through Congress. So the message is pretty clear. Social media is impacting kids' mental health, and something should be done. And Haidt offers 4 recommendations that he cites in every interview. No smartphones before high school. Flip phones for texting and calling is fine, just not the smartphone. No social media until 16. More play for kids and opportunities to play without parents managing it. Probably the way you and I played as kids in the 80s. You know, bike riding, roller skating, being with friends without parents, organizing and supervising every minute of our play.
Oh, hallelujah. So good.
And 4th, phone-free schools. Not just keep phones in your pocket, but actually keeping the phones out of the classroom, whether that's in a Yonder pouch or in phone lockers.
Yeah, a lot of schools here in our region are talking about Yonder pouches, I'm sure throughout the country, more for middle school than high school, but it's definitely a conversation.
Actually, I just saw that Governor Newsom of California wants to restrict phone use in all California schools. I had read first about the LA schools considering policies, but it seems that Newsom supports restricting it in the whole state.
That is bold.
So I don't know that that's going to happen, but it's out there. But bringing it all back to AI, there's a recent paper about the future of child development in the AI era. We'll put the link to the extensive article in the show notes, but the authors note similar concerns about AI's impact on children's physical and mental health. Excessive screen time and reliance on AI-driven entertainment can lead to reduced physical activity, sleep disruption, and potential negative effects on attention and executive functioning. And the integration of AI in children's environments raises privacy issues and the risk of exposure to inappropriate content. But they also note the positives that we've sort of cited as well. Enhanced cognitive development through personalized learning and interactive educational tools, fostering engagement and motivation in children. These AI-driven educational programs can adapt to individual learning styles and paces, potentially improving academic outcomes. And AI can support the development of socio-emotional skills by providing interactive and immersive experiences, such as virtual reality environments that promote empathy and social understanding.
Yeah, it is a complicated time to be a parent or a teacher.
It really is. And, you know, one of the things Haidt says is everyone's got to be on the same page. And I think that's where we struggled as parents was we couldn't say no to the social media because that's where the socialization was happening. So by not letting our girls on it, they were missing out. But if all the parents said no, there are no...
Right. Everybody's in the pool together.
Right. And they would have to figure it out. But I mean, kind of the horse is out of the gate for my kids, but if I had younger kids, I'd really be thinking about it differently.
Right. I mean, I'm glad that my kids are a little older. Gosh, I just feel for those people who have 2 teenage girls. I can't imagine.
Matt, now it's time to go beneath the surface.
Liz, during our AI Community of Practice kickoff in May, there was a great discussion in my breakout room, and I've been thinking about it quite a bit ever since.
Interesting, Matt. Hey, before you dig into that, we'll be running our AI Community of Practice with our 5 regional nonprofit education service center collaborators next year. We just set the dates for next year. We'll meet monthly, except December and June, mostly on the 3rd Thursday of the month from 3:15 to 4:30 Eastern Time. Soon we'll add a registration link in the show notes. But if you'd like to join in, just email us at chatedu@edadvance.org. That's chatedu@edadvance.
Wow, nice plug, Liz.
Oh, I've learned from the best, Matt.
I'm not sure if that was a dig or a compliment, but let's just move on. All right, so in my breakout room, a superintendent that I like quite a bit asked a question about state guidance, right? You know, like what's our state Department of Education doing here in our state? And it just turns out that a very close colleague of ours who works for the State Department of Ed was on, and she did a really nice job acknowledging his desire for state guidance, you know, all the while just being candid about where we were in Connecticut.
Ooh, sounds a little spicy. Was it?
I know. I think everyone in the breakout room was on the edge of their seats. No, it actually wasn't that spicy. I mean, everyone loves a little pushback, you know, with the State Department of Ed, including folks who work at the State Department of Ed. But he was mostly wondering where we were and acknowledging that there's plenty of room to lead locally.
Nice. Though that's not often the case, I've heard plenty of stories where folks at every level say, without some guidance from above, we can't move on this complicated topic.
Yeah, right. I like the accent that you did that in, too. I think that's right. And it happens at every level, right, Liz? I mean, that could be the state talking about the feds. It could be a superintendent talking about the state. It could be a principal talking about their district office, or it could be a teacher talking about the principal, and so on and so on.
Correct. And the reality is that for state guidance, about 2/3 of schools across the U.S. are in states that have not provided guidance yet. I believe Utah is the last of 13 or 14 states, including Ohio, North Carolina, and Arizona, to release state-level guidance frameworks just this spring.
Yeah, that's right. And if folks are curious, we can drop a few of those state-level guidance documents into the show notes. The EdTech press kind of goes bananas every time some new state releases their state guidance. My guess is that it's probably just a slow news day. But there was sort of an interesting meta story looking across several state documents exploring commonalities. The news hit was from a publication called K-12 Drive titled, "What Themes Are Emerging from State AI Guidance?" The article specifically looks, if I remember, at California, North Carolina, Ohio, Oregon, Virginia, Washington, West Virginia. And it was analyzed by the nonprofit Digital Promise and the Center for Reinventing Public Education at Arizona State University.
All right, good tease, Matt. So what are the themes?
I know, right? It's so exciting. What are the cross-cutting themes across state-level AI guidance documents? I mean, it's sort of interesting. There's no big surprises here. I mean, the first is workforce prep. So states are emphasizing how AI will impact the future workforce and the need to prepare students for an AI-enabled or for AI-enabled careers. The second is AI literacy. There's a focus on the need for AI literacy for students, for educators, and community members. I like the third. It's sort of a human-centered approach. They've followed the U.S. Department of Ed lead that states are stressing this phrase we use a lot here, humans in the loop, ensuring that educators remain as the key decision makers rather than being replaced by AI. The fourth is equity and inclusion, which we've talked a lot about here on ChatEDU. As well, the fifth we've discussed quite a bit, which is data privacy and security. And the sixth is shifting away from the bans, moving more towards a proactive conversation about safe, ethical, and productive student use. Acknowledging the plagiarism issue, but kind of trying to address that and then move forward. The seventh is that you need routine policy updates because it's changing so quickly. And the last one is decentralized approaches. Here, the article notes that despite state guidance, there still may be a potential for decentralized and fragmented set of approaches to AI at the district level.
So that last bit makes it sound like a problem, but I'm not really sure it is. I mean, decentralized approaches are the foundation of our entire K-12 education system here in the U.S., at least. Yeah,
I agree. And in reality, every district that I'm working with is focused on that previous set of 7 items, right? They're keenly aware of the workforce realities and the equity implications. They understand that. Look at that new Microsoft Work Trends report where 60% of employers say that they would want someone with AI skills. So they're focused on literacy. They're focused in keeping humans in the loop. They understand data privacy protections. They are shifting from bans to student-facing pilots. They are understanding the need for AI guidance and frameworks. And the reality that those are going to change over time. They're investing in PD and awareness sessions. So while state-level guidance might be helpful, it certainly doesn't prevent school leaders really at any level, wherever you are a leader, from making the right moves and investments in this work.
100%, Matt. And in a way, the last part about decentralization is where it can become the most interesting and impactful. In our AI planning team framework for schools, one of the very first tasks is to think through alignment between what AI can provide and existing district priorities or pain points and opportunities that can be seized. But really, the pain points and opportunities are viewed through the lens of district priorities. That's the driver. Whether or not you live in a state that has a state policy, the most important work is situated around what schools want to accomplish with AI. It's almost better to look within rather than look up, so to speak, to see what some state framework is telling you what to do.
Yeah, I think that's right. And hey, if you're in a third of the states that has one of these state frameworks, Arizona, North Carolina, Ohio, that's great. Good for you, right? There's all sorts of useful frames out there. But if you lack a state policy, it's not a reason for inaction. And the existence of a state framework honestly shouldn't take away from the opportunity to look within.
And that's not to mention that there are so many great non-government groups that have released super helpful frameworks to support teachers and school leaders. No shade intended for our great state educational agencies, but if I had to guess, the folks at Teach AI have had more traffic to their awesome Teach AI Toolkit than any state document. If for some reason you've not seen it, we'll link to it in the show notes, along with the COSN Readiness Checklist. And there's a new resource out from Digital Promise that looks, well, promising. Sorry, Matt. Couldn't help myself.
God, Liz. Clearly, we know who the comedian is on the ChatEDU team. Okay, as always, we like to wrap up our Beneath the Surface deep dive with some practical ideas or suggestions for listeners. In this case, I'd love to go right back to where we started with this really good question that was raised during our community of practice regarding how anyone, regardless of their role, like a teacher or an administrator or a board member, can make meaningful and measurable steps where there are no state policies in place. Here again, that means over 2/3 of the United States, and that number is probably even higher as we look across the globe.
Right. And as we've argued, that's totally fine. In fact, it might be to your advantage. So step one might be to think about what all teachers, staff, and administrators will need, but also what are those high leverage strategic investments you can make? And then second, what other framework documents might be helpful? We've mentioned a few now, but honestly, our go-to lately has been a very simple planning and implementation framework released by Michigan Virtual.
Yeah, so they have a super simple framework that's full of actionable steps that anyone can take really at any level, irrespective of whether they have state guidance or not. We've seriously simplified it here, but they break it down into 4 steps, right? Initiate, build, engage, and evaluate. So Liz and I will bounce through them. So in the initiate phase, they suggest hold awareness sessions, form an advisory team, develop a first draft of policies, or generally folks are kind of leaning more towards guidelines, right? And begin to explore lots of different tools that are out there with an eye to state data privacy.
And the second phase is build. So, this is where they are providing professional development, both for teachers and administrators. They're refining guidelines with some input. Consider including students. We strongly recommend that. Adapting assessment strategies. And this is a longer conversation that goes into AI-resistant or durable activities and assessments. And then publish a collection of AI tools that address unique pedagogical needs.
All right. And the third kind of phase or step, and I don't know if these are totally linear, right? Some of these, Liz, you would do together, but the next is the engage phase. So begin AI literacy efforts in the classroom. And those are great in context. Like for your K-5 kids, you might be just doing some awareness and some early understanding of what AI is, but they're not using student-facing tools. Then as kids are a little bit older, there might be some student-facing pilots or anchor examples or benchmark examples. And even, for kids that are really into this stuff, maybe there's a pathway that's focused on AI and robotics. Next is to share the implementation guidelines with students and families, so more kind of broadly get that stuff socialized, and then provide ongoing training. It's not a one and done.
The last phase is evaluate. This is something that can happen, like Matt said, in a nonlinear way, but you want to identify and share promising practices. Those are things that teachers are finding useful or administrators are finding useful. It's important to update policies and guidelines as needed. The policies will change and guidelines will need to be tweaked and updated as this is moving very fast. And finally, you want to monitor the adoption of tools and strategies. Who's using them? How are they using them? And are there other people that could be using them in different ways?
Yeah, that's perfect. You can go back to that K-12 drive story, to look more closely at the cross-cutting themes around workforce readiness and AI literacy and equity and human in the loop and all that good stuff. But I really value the kind of task and action-oriented frame from Michigan Virtual. We'll link it in the show notes, and we hope it's useful.
And now it's time for our short stack chat back. Okay, for our chat back this week, we thought we'd go to our exploration of AI ethics and pose a question to Claude, who will answer, with the support of 11 Labs, in the writing style of one of our early quasi-ethicists, Ben Franklin. Here is the question. What are the pros and cons of using large language models for ethical advice?
Hark, dear reader, to the merits and pitfalls of seeking moral counsel from these grand engines of language. On the one hand, they offer a vast repository of knowledge and the capacity for nuanced reasoning, much like a wise sage who has absorbed the wisdom of countless tomes. Yet we must be wary, for these artificial oracles lack true understanding of human experience and may lead us astray with their cold logic, devoid of the warmth of genuine empathy and the hard-won lessons of a life well lived.
A perfect combo, Matt. Ethics, Ben Franklin, Claude, and 11 Labs. I'm sure old Ben would approve.
I don't know about that, but hopefully.
As always, we'd love to hear what you think, so please let us know at chatedU@edadvance.org. And also rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you are using.
Let's roll the credits.
ChatEDU is recorded, edited, and produced by Ahmed Malik, whose dedication and expertise bring our discussions to life. ChatEDU's executive producer is Cameron Audia. Additionally, we are grateful for the support of our colleague Gary Robinson. Gary is the ChatEDU Design and Outreach Ginsu Knife, and we appreciate his time and talents. And of course, a big ChatEDU shout out to our fearless leader and executive director, Jonathan Costa, for inspiring the pod. Finally, a heartfelt thank you to our listeners for joining us on this journey exploring the thoughtful and innovative integration of AI in education.
See you next time.
Bye!
Hello, followers of ChatEDU. My name is Jonathan Costa, and I am proud to be the Executive Director of EdAdvance, the Regional Educational Service Center in Litchfield, Connecticut. On behalf of Matt, Liz, and our entire agency, I want to thank you for listening and for your interest in this vital educational topic. During the summer, we will continue to drop weekly ChatEDU episodes, some of which will be in a special in-depth interview format with interesting guests that I think you will enjoy. Our regular weekly features will return as the summer winds down, and we hope you will keep an eye out for our in-depth AI community of practice and also our new AI micro-credentials for both teachers and educational leaders during the 24-25 school year. Take care, thanks again, and please tell your friends and colleagues about ChatEDU.